Okay, so I'm making this video because I basically just want to share some of my knowledge about teaching English in South Korea, teaching ESL, a bit of information for anyone who's considering doing it for the first time. I was there for 5 years. I worked at a lot of different schools, worked for many different companies, so I learned a couple of things. I learned a lot through my mistakes. So basically, why do people go to Korea to teach English? They go for several reasons, I suppose. Maybe you go just to travel. Maybe you go because you want to experience living in another culture and try your hand at teaching. Possibly you just want a fast way to pay off student loans. Those are all common reasons for going over. A lot of people basically go to teach English in either Japan, Korea, China, or Taiwan. I chose Korea because basically it was the most profitable. The cost of living is relatively low, and the wages are high. On par with the wages in Japan, but the cost of living in Japan is much higher. Taiwan, I really don't know. I've never been there. So, I'll tell you what I do know. Getting a job, teaching ESL. The most common would be through a recruiter. And basically, if you do any kind of search online, it's really easy to find a recruiter. Sometimes you do have to be a little wary. Some of them are a little unscrupulous. Basically, they get a fee of about anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 for getting you to Korea. Okay, that's paid by the school they're headhunting for. So sometimes they'll tell you things that aren't quite true in order to get you there, and you find out when you're there. You can use different websites, things like PusanWeb.com or EnglishSpectrum.com, workandplay.co.kr. I'll put those on the side thing where the text is and stuff. I'll put those links there for you. Some people are sent over there. They have a friend who's already there. So basically, if you're going to go teach, there's about 5 kind of basic categories of school. The first one being kindergarten. That's what I did my first year. Kindergartens are usually the toughest jobs. The work is hard, and the wages tend to be the lowest of all English schools in Korea. So you can work harder than most people and get paid less. So often they want people who have no experience, because you don't know any better. Typically you teach a kindergarten class, kids who are anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 years old all morning, and then in the afternoon, early evening, you would teach some elementary school kids. Again, those ones are a little challenging and tricky. You might find yourself wondering why you're working harder than your friends, yet making less money. Then you have what we call a regular hagwon job. A hagwon is the Korean word for private school, private academy. Those are the typical teaching elementary students from about 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. you'll work. 5 days a week. Those are good. Gives you a lot of free time. So your mornings are free. So you can take classes if you want, study taekwondo, get a part-time job teaching maybe at another school in the morning. So those can be great for making a few extra bucks. Then you have the most coveted positions, the most highly sought after are university jobs. Typically you have 4 months paid vacation every year, but unless you have a graduate degree, there's no point in trying to even apply, because if you don't have a master's in something, even though you're just teaching English, they won't look at you. Next you have what they call adult academies, and I did this for a year. An adult academy, you're teaching usually business people, university students, and it's a great way to meet some really interesting people and really learn a lot about Korean culture. It's an easy way to make friends and do things outside of your work. But the one downside is the hours. Since your clients are usually working people, they're only available to study English before work and after work, which means you work something called a split shift. So your first class could be as early as 6 a.m. That's right, 6 a.m. you're in the classroom teaching, but more typically about 7 a.m. you work for 3 or 4 hours, and you might have anywhere from a 6 to an 8-hour break, and you come back at night. And that's tough. That's really difficult to do. Some of the big schools, I worked for a school called Pagoda. I worked for Pagoda for a year. There's a school called YBM. They're really big. English Channel. So those are some of the bigger schools. Yeah, so again, those are interesting, but the downside is the hours. And then probably something that's come up in recent years, and probably some of the more stable and solid jobs where you'll always get paid, would be working at a public school. So you're actually teaching at a government-run elementary school or junior high school or high school. So you're paid by the government. So you're working the hours that a regular teacher would. You get free housing. The pay is decent. It's not bad. And you get more vacation than most teachers. You don't get a 2-month summer vacation. No. They'll have you doing camps during that time. But those are pretty solid jobs. Okay, now a visa. In order to teach legal, you need a working visa. And what do you need? How do you qualify for a working visa? Well, you have to have graduated from a university. You have to have a 3 or 4 year degree in any subject. It could be science or English, blah, blah, blah. You're going to have to prove that you have this degree by getting a copy of your degree itself and a sealed copy of your transcripts to the Korean immigration offices. Now, some schools will ask you to get your visa. They'll go through the motions before you leave your home country. So if you live in Canada, they might want you to get it in Toronto or Vancouver at the Korean consulate. If they don't do that, then that's awesome. Because if you get to Korea and still don't have your visa, that means you're going to have to make a trip to Japan on their dime. So basically, if you come to Korea without a visa first, you're going to get a free trip to Japan. Nice. So if you're going to be living in Seoul, you are going to probably go to Osaka, Japan for your visa run, which is 2 days. And if you live in a southern city like Busan or Gwangju, you're probably going to go to Fukuoka, Japan. It's pretty great. Now, obviously, South Korea isn't the biggest country in the world. It's actually quite small geographically, but there's a lot of different cities. Now, most teachers end up going to Seoul because Seoul, well, it's the biggest city. It's about almost half the population of the country lives there. And like anything, all cities have their upsides and their downsides. What's cool about Seoul? It's exciting. If you like the nightlife, you like clubs, you like lots of fast, exciting things, Seoul's the place to be. But it's really overcrowded. It's congested. The air isn't so good. I lived there for a while. I also lived in Busan. Now, Busan is Korea's second largest city, about 4 million people and change. And it's a little more relaxed, a little more subdued. And it's got a lot of beaches. It's a coastal city, lots of beaches. Foreigners who are teachers love to hang out on the beach in the warm weather. So that's cool. Other cities, there's a lot of other cities around. They each have their own charm, I suppose. Their bad sides. If you lived in a smaller city or a more rural area, I suppose you'll get more of a taste of the real Korea. Probably not so many people will speak English, not so many services will be in English, but it would be a great way to really learn about the country. Yeah, so basically what I would suggest doing if you've gotten a lead on a job is to go to some different websites and make some posts and ask some questions about that school. Some schools have really bad reputations. There's one I worked at my first year which is quite notorious for kindergarten. It's called Wonderland. It's been blacklisted a lot. Schools like Kids Herald, I've heard bad things. So you should maybe go to a website like pusanweb.com or englishspectrum.com and get on the message boards and just send out your feelers and try to talk to some teachers who work there. If you have any questions, send me a message in the comments section down below, and I'll answer. I'll try to give you any advice I can. So hope that helped in some way for all of you thinking of teaching ESL in South Korea.